Malcolm Seal Gerard Gibson, born January 3, 1956, is an American actor and filmmaker, screenwriter, producer and director. He is most well known as an action hero, for roles such as Martin Riggs in the Lethal Weapon buddy cop film series and Max Rokitansky in the first 3 films in the Mad Max post-apocalyptic action series. He was born in Peekskill, New York, and moved with his parents to Sydney when he was 12 years old. He studied acting at the Australian National Institute of Dramatic Art. During the 1980s, Gibson founded Icon Entertainment, a production company which independent film director Adam Egoyan has called an alternative to the studio system. Director Peter Weir cast Gibson as one of the leads in the critically acclaimed World War I drama Gallipoli, 1981, which earned Gibson a Best Actor award from the Australian Film Institute. The film also helped to earn Gibson the reputation of a serious, versatile actor. In 1995, Gibson produced, directed, and starred in the epic historical drama film Braveheart, for which he won the Golden Globe and Academy Award for Best Director, along with the Academy Award for Best Picture. In 2004, he directed and produced the financially successful, but controversial, biblical drama film The Passion of the Christ. Gibson received further critical notice for his directorial work of the 2006 action-adventure film Apocalypto, which is set in Mesoamerica during the early 16th century. Early life. Gibson was born in Peekskill, New York, the 6th of 11 children, and the second son of Hutton Gibson, a writer, and Irish-born Anne Patricia, née Riley, died 1990. His paternal grandmother was opera contralto Eva Milot, 1875–1920, who was born in Australia, to Irish parents, while his paternal grandfather, John Hutton Gibson, was a millionaire tobacco businessman from the American South. One of Gibson's younger brothers, Donald, is also an actor. Gibson's first name is derived from Saint Mel, 5th century Irish saint, and founder of Gibson's mother's native diocese, Ardagh, while his second name, Colm Seal, is also shared by an Irish saint and is the name of the parish in County Longford where Gibson's mother was born and raised. Because of his mother, Gibson retains dual Irish and American citizenship. His father was awarded $145,000 in a work-related injury lawsuit against New York Central Railroad on February 14, 1968, and soon afterwards relocated his family to West Pymble, Sydney. Mel Gibson was 12 years old at the time. The move to his grandmother's native Australia was both for economic reasons and his father's expectation that the Australian Defence Forces would reject his eldest son for the draft during the Vietnam War. Gibson was educated by members of the Congregation of Christian Brothers at St. Leo's Catholic College in Waruna, New South Wales, during his high school years. Career overview. Gibson gained very favorable notices from film critics when he first entered the cinematic scene, as well as comparisons to several classic movie stars. In 1982, Vincent Canby wrote that Mr. Gibson recalls the young Steve McQueen. I can't define star quality, but whatever it is, Mr. Gibson has it. Gibson has also been likened to a combination Clark Gable and Humphrey Bogart. Gibson's roles in the Mad Max series of films, Peter Weir's Gallipoli, and the Lethal Weapon series of films earned him the label of action hero. Later, Gibson expanded into a variety of acting projects including human dramas such as Hamlet, and comedic roles such as those in Maverick and What Women Want. He expanded beyond acting into directing and producing, with The Man Without a Face, in 1993, Braveheart, in 1995, The Passion of the Christ, in 2004, and Apocalypto, in 2006. Jess Cagle of Time compared Gibson with Cary Grant, Sean Connery, and Robert Redford. Connery once suggested Gibson should play the next James Bond to Connery's M. Gibson turned down the role, reportedly because he feared being typecast. Stage. Gibson studied at the National Institute of Dramatic Art, NIDA, in Sydney. The students at NIDA were classically trained in the British theatre tradition rather than in preparation for screen acting. As students, Gibson and actress Judy Davis played the leads in Romeo and Juliet, and Gibson played the role of Queen Titania in an experimental production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. After graduation in 1977, Gibson immediately began work on the filming of Mad Max, but continued to work as a stage actor, and joined the State Theatre Company of South Australia in Adelaide. Gibson's theatrical credits include the character S-Dragon, opposite Geoffrey Rush, in Waiting for Godot, and the role of Biff Loman in a 1982 production of Death of a Salesman in Sydney. Gibson's most recent theatrical performance, opposite Sissy Spacek, was the 1993 production of Love Letters by A. R. Gurney, in Telluride, Colorado. Australian television and cinema. While a student at NITA, Gibson made his film debut in the 1977 film Summer City, for which he was paid $400. Gibson then played the title character in the film Mad Max, 1979. He was paid $15,000 for this role. Shortly after making the film, he did a season with the South Australian Theatre Company. During this period, he shared a $30 a week apartment in Adelaide with his future wife Robin. After Mad Max, Gibson also played a mentally slow youth in the film Tim. During this period, Gibson also appeared in Australian television series guest roles. He appeared in serial The Sullivans as Naval Lieutenant Ray Henderson, in police procedural Cop Shop, and in the pilot episode of Prison Serial Punishment, which was produced in 1980, screened 1981. Gibson joined the cast of the World War II action film Attack Force Z, which was not released until 1982 when Gibson had become a bigger star. Director Peter Weir cast Gibson as one of the leads in the critically acclaimed World War I drama Gallipoli, which earned Gibson another Best Actor award from the Australian Film Institute. The film Gallipoli also helped to earn Gibson the reputation of a serious, versatile actor and gained him the Hollywood agent Ed L'Amato. The sequel Mad Max 2 was his first hit in America, released as The Road Warrior. In 1982, Gibson again attracted critical acclaim in Peter Weir's romantic thriller The Year of Living Dangerously. Following a year hiatus from film acting after the birth of his twin sons, Gibson took on the role of Fletcher Christian in The Bounty in 1984. Gibson earned his first $1 million salary for playing Max Rokitansky for the third time, in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome in 1985. Hollywood. Early Hollywood years. Mel Gibson's first American film was Mark Rydell's 1984 drama The River, in which he and Sissy Spacek played struggling Tennessee farmers. Gibson then starred in the gothic romance Mrs. Soffel for Australian director Gillian Armstrong. He and Matthew Modine played condemned convict brothers opposite Diane Keaton as the warden's wife who visits them to read the Bible. In 1985, after working on 4 films in a row, Gibson took almost 2 years off at his Australian cattle station. He returned to play the role of Martin Riggs in Lethal Weapon, a film which helped to cement his status as a Hollywood leading man. Gibson's next film was Robert Towne's Tequila Sunrise, followed by Lethal Weapon 2, in 1989. Gibson next starred in 3 films back-to-back, Bird on a Wire, Air America, and Hamlet. All were released in 1990s. During the 1990s, Gibson alternated between commercial and personal projects. His films in the first half of the decade were Forever Young, Lethal Weapon 3, Maverick, and Braveheart. He then starred in Ransom, Conspiracy Theory, Lethal Weapon 4, and Payback. Gibson also served as the speaking and singing voice of John Smith in Disney's Pocahontas. After 2000, in 2000, Gibson acted in 3 films that each grossed over $100 million, The Patriot, Chicken Run, and What Women Want. In 2002, Gibson appeared in the Vietnam War drama We Were Soldiers and M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, which became the highest-grossing film of Gibson's acting career. While promoting Signs, Gibson said that he no longer wanted to be a movie star and would only act in film again if the script were truly extraordinary. In 2010, Gibson appeared in Edge of Darkness, which marked his first starring role since 2002 and was an adaptation of the BBC miniseries, Edge of Darkness. In 2010, following an outburst at his ex-girlfriend that was made public, Gibson was dropped from the talent agency of William Morris Endeavor. Gibson most recently played 2 villains, VOZ in Machete Kills in 2013, opposite Danny Trejo, and Conrad Stonebanks in The Expendables 3 opposite Sylvester Stallone in 2014. Producer. After his success in Hollywood with the Lethal Weapon series, Gibson began to move into producing and directing. With partner Bruce Davey, Gibson formed Icon Productions in 1989 in order to make Hamlet. In addition to producing or co-producing many of Gibson's own star vehicles, Icon has turned out many other small films, ranging from Immortal Beloved to An Ideal Husband. Gibson has taken supporting roles in some of these films, such as The $1 Million Hotel and The Singing Detective. Gibson has also produced a number of projects for television, including a biopic on the Three Stooges and the 2008 PBS documentary Carrier. Icon has grown from being just a production company to also be an international distribution company and film exhibitor in Australia and New Zealand. In June 2010, Gibson was in Brownsville, Texas, filming scenes for the movie, How I Spent My Summer Vacation, about a career criminal put in a tough prison in Mexico. In October 2010, it was reported that Gibson would have a small role in The Hangover, Part 2, but he was removed from the film after the cast and crew objected to his involvement. Director. Mel Gibson has credited his directors, particularly George Miller, Peter Weir, and Richard Donner, with teaching him the craft of filmmaking and influencing him as a director. According to Robert Downey, Jr., studio Studio executives encouraged Gibson in 1989 to try directing, an idea he rebuffed at the time. Gibson made his directorial debut in 1993 with The Man Without a Face, followed 2 years later by Braveheart, which earned Gibson the Academy Award for Best Director. Gibson had long planned to direct a remake of Fahrenheit 451, but in 1999 the project was indefinitely postponed because of scheduling conflicts. Gibson was scheduled to direct Robert Downey, Jr. in a Los Angeles stage production of Hamlet in January 2001, but Downey's drug relapse ended the project. In 2002, while promoting We Were Soldiers and Signs to the Press, Gibson mentioned that he was planning to pare back on acting and return to directing. In September 2002, Gibson announced that he would direct a film called The Passion in Aramaic and Latin with no subtitles because he hoped to transcend language barriers with filmic storytelling. In 2004, he released the controversial film The Passion of the Christ, with subtitles, which he co-wrote, co-produced, and directed. The film went on to become the highest-grossing rated R film of all time with $370,782,930 in U.S. box office sales. Gibson directed a few episodes of Complete Savages for the ABC network. In 2006, he directed the action-adventure film Apocalypto, his second film to feature sparse dialogue in a non-English language. Film work. Gibson's acting career began in 1976, with a role on the Australian television series The Sullivans. In his career, Gibson has appeared in 43 films, including the Mad Max and Lethal Weapon film series. In addition to acting, Gibson has also directed 4 films, including Braveheart and The Passion of the Christ, produced 11 films, and written 2 films. Films either starring or directed by Mel Gibson have earned over $2.5 billion in the United States alone. Gibson's filmography includes television series, feature films, television films, and animated films. Mad Max series. Gibson got his breakthrough role as the leather-clad post-apocalyptic survivor in George Miller's Mad Max. The independently financed blockbuster helped to make him an international star. In the United States, the actor's Australian accents were dubbed with American accents. The original film spawned 2 sequels, Mad Max 2, known in North America as The Road Warrior, and Mad Max 3, known in North America as Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. A 4th movie, Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015, was made with Tom Hardy in the title role. Gallipoli, the 1981 Peter Weir film, Gallipoli is about a group of young men from rural Western Australia who enlist in the Australian Imperial Force during World War I. They are sent to invade the Ottoman Empire, where they take part in the 1915 Gallipoli campaign. During the course of the movie, the young men slowly lose their innocence about the war. The climax of the movie centers around the catastrophic AIF offensive known as the Battle of the NEK. Peter Weir cast Gibson in the role of Frank Dunn, an Irish-Australian drifter with an intense cynicism about fighting for the British Empire. Newcomer Mark Lee was recruited to play the idealistic Archie Hamilton after participating in a photo session for the director. Gibson later recalled, "I'd auditioned for an earlier film and he told me right up front, I'm not going to cast you for this part. You're not old enough, but thanks for coming in. I just wanted to meet you." He told me he wanted me for Gallipoli a couple of years later because I wasn't the archetypal Australian. He had Mark Lee, the angelic-looking, ideal Australian kid, and he wanted something of a modern sensibility. He thought the audience needed someone to relate to of their own time. Gibson later said that Gallipoli is not really a war movie. That's just the backdrop. It's really the story of 2 young men. The critically acclaimed film helped to further launch Gibson's career. He won the award for Best Actor in a Leading Role from the Australian Film Institute. The Year of Living Dangerously. Gibson played a naive but ambitious journalist opposite Sigourney Weaver and Linda Hunt in Peter Weir's atmospheric 1982 film The Year of Living Dangerously, based on the novel of the same name by Christopher Koch. The movie was both a critical and commercial success, and the upcoming Australian actor was heavily marketed by MGM Studio. In his review of the film, Vincent Canby of the New York Times wrote, "If this film doesn't make an international star of Mr. Gibson, then nothing will. He possesses both the necessary talent and the screen presence." According to John Hiscock of the Daily Telegraph, the film did, indeed, establish Gibson as an international talent. Gibson was initially reluctant to accept the role of Guy Hamilton. "I didn't necessarily see my role as a great challenge. My character was, like the film suggests, a puppet, and I went with that. It wasn't some star thing, even though they advertised it that way." Gibson saw some similarities between himself and the character of Guy. "He's not a silver-tongued devil. He's kind of immature and he has some rough edges, and I guess you could say the same for me." Gibson has cited this screen performance as his personal favorite. The Bounty. Gibson followed the footsteps of Errol Flynn, Clark Clark Gable, and Marlon Brando by starring as Fletcher Christian in a cinematic retelling of the Mutiny on the Bounty. The resulting 1984 film The Bounty is considered to be the most historically accurate version. However, Gibson has expressed a belief that the film's revisionism did not go far enough. He has stated that his character should have been portrayed as the film's antagonist. He has further praised Anthony Hopkins' performance as Lieutenant William Bligh as the best aspect of the film. Lethal Weapon series. Gibson moved into more mainstream commercial filmmaking with the popular buddy cop Lethal Weapon series, which began with the 1987 original. In the films he played LAPD Detective Martin Riggs, a recently widowed Vietnam veteran with a death wish and a penchant for violence and gunplay. In the films, he is partnered with a reserved family man named Roger Murtaugh, Danny Glover. Following the success of Lethal Weapon, director Richard Donner and principal cast revisited the characters in 3 sequels: Lethal Weapon 2, 1989, Lethal Weapon 3, 1993, and Lethal Weapon 4, 1998. With its 4th installment, the Lethal Weapon series embodied the quintessence of the buddy cop pick, Hamlet. Gibson made the unusual transition from action to classical drama, playing William Shakespeare's Danish prince in Franco Zeffirelli's Hamlet. Gibson was cast alongside experienced Shakespearean actors Ian Holm, Alan Bates, and Paul Scofield. He compared working with Scofield to being thrown into the ring with Mike Tyson. Scofield said of Gibson, "Not the sort of actor you'd think would make an ideal Hamlet, but he had enormous integrity and intelligence." Braveheart. In 1995, Mel Gibson directed, produced, and starred in Braveheart, a biographical film of Sir William Wallace, a Scottish nationalist who was executed in 1305 for high treason against King Edward I of England. Gibson received 2 Academy Awards, Best Director and Best Picture, for his second directorial effort. In winning the Academy Award for Best Director, Gibson became only the 6th actor-turned-filmmaker to do so. Braveheart influenced the Scottish nationalist movement and helped to revive the film genre of the historical epic. The Battle of Stirling Bridge sequence is considered by critics to be one of the all-time best-directed battle scenes. The film's depiction of the Prince of Wales as an effeminate homosexual caused the film to be attacked by the Gay Alliance. The Gay Alliance was especially enraged by a scene in which King Edward I murders his son's male lover by throwing him out of a castle window. Gibson, who had previously been reported making several homophobic statements, now replied, "The fact that King Edward throws this character out a window has nothing to do with him being gay. He's terrible to his son, to everybody." Gibson asserted that the reason that King Edward I kills his son's lover is because the king is a psychopath. Gibson also expressed bewilderment that some filmgoers laughed at this murder. "We cut a scene out, unfortunately, where you really got to know that character, Edward II, and to understand his plight and his pain, but it just stopped the film in the first act so much that you thought, when's this story going to start?" The Passion of the Christ. Gibson directed, produced, co-wrote, and funded the 2004 film The Passion of the Christ, which chronicled the passion and death of Jesus. Jim Caviezel. The film was shot exclusively in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew. Although Gibson originally intended to release the film without subtitles, he eventually relented for theatrical exhibition. The film sparked divergent reviews, ranging from high praise to criticism of the violence. The Anti-Defamation League accused Gibson of anti-Semitism over the film's unflattering depiction of Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin. In The Nation, reviewer Katha Pollitt said, "Gibson has violated just about every precept of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, conference's own 1988 criteria for the portrayal of Jews in dramatizations of the Passion: no bloodthirsty Jews, no rabble, no use of scripture that reinforces negative stereotypes of Jews, etc. The priests have big noses and gnarly faces, lumpish bodies, yellow teeth. Herod Antipas and his court are a bizarre collection of oily-haired, epicene perverts. The good Jews look like Italian movie stars. Italian sex symbol Monica Bellucci is Mary Maudlin. Mary, who would have been around 50 and appeared 70, could pass for a ripe 35. Among those to defend Gibson were Orthodox Jewish Rabbi Daniel Lapin and radio personality Michael Medved. Referring to ADL National Director Abraham Foxman, Rabbi Lapin said that by calling the Passion of the Christ anti-Semitic, what he is saying is that the only way, for Christians, to escape the wrath of Foxman is to repudiate their own faith. In an interview with the Globe and Mail, Gibson stated, "If anyone has distorted gospel passages to rationalize cruelty towards Jews or anyone, it's in defiance of repeated papal condemnation. The papacy has condemned racism in any form. Jesus died for the sins of all times, and I'll be the first on the line for culpability." Eventually, the continued media attacks began to anger Gibson. After his father's Holocaust denial was sharply criticized in print by the New York Times writer Frank Rich, Gibson retorted, "I want to kill him. I want his intestines on a stick. I want to kill his dog." Gibson's traditionalist Catholic upbringing was also the target of criticism. In a 2006 interview with Diane Sawyer, Gibson stated that he feels that his human rights were violated by the often vitriolic attacks on his person, his family, and his religious beliefs which were sparked by the Passion. The movie grossed $611,899,420 worldwide and $370,782,930 in the U.S. alone, surpassing any motion picture starring Gibson. In U.S. box offices, it became the eighth, at the time, highest-grossing film in history and the highest-grossing rated R film of all time. The film was nominated for 3 Academy Awards and won the People's Choice Award for Favorite Dramatic Motion Picture. Apocalypto. Gibson received further critical acclaim for his directing of the 2006 action-adventure film Apocalypto. Gibson's fourth directorial effort is set in Mesoamerica during the early 16th century against the turbulent end times of a Maya civilization. The sparse dialogue is spoken in the Yucatec Maya language by a cast of Native American descent. Gibson himself has stated that the film is an attempt at making a deliberate point about great civilizations and what causes them to decline and disintegrate. Gibson said, "People think that modern man is so enlightened, but we're susceptible to the same forces, and we are also capable of the same heroism and transcendence." This theme is further explored by a quote from Will Durant, which is superimposed at the very beginning of the film: "A great civilization is not conquered from without until it has destroyed itself from within." The Beaver. Gibson starred in The Beaver, a film directed by former Maverick co-star Jodie Foster. The Beaver premiered at the South by Southwest Festival in Austin, TX on March 16, 2011. The opening weekend in 22 theaters was considered a flop. It made $104,000, which comes to a per-theater average of $4,745. The film's distributor, Summit Entertainment, had originally planned for a wide release of The Beaver for the weekend of the 20th of May, but after the initial box office returns for the film, the company changed course and decided instead to give the film a limited art house run. Michael Chipley of The New York Times observed on June 5, 2011, that the film had cleared just about $1 million, making it a certified flop. Director Jodie Foster opined that the film did not do well with American audiences because it was a dramedy, and very often Americans are not comfortable with that. Before its release, much of the coverage focused on the unavoidable association between the protagonist's issues and Mel Gibson's own well-publicized personal and legal problems, see below, including a conviction of battery of his ex-girlfriend in March, wrote Time magazine. The Beaver is a somber, sad domestic drama featuring an alcoholic in acute crisis. Sound familiar? Almost like a documentary. It's hard to separate Gibson's true life story from what's happening on screen. While critics were impressed by the actor's performance, audiences seemed to stay away due to the ick factor of seeing Gibson on screen. Prospective films. As of 2013, Gibson's cancelled projects included a film about the writing of the Oxford English Dictionary, OED, and a Richard Donner-helmed film with the working title Sam and George. Asked in 2007 if he planned to return to acting and specifically to action roles, Gibson said, "I think I'm too old for that, but you never know. I just like telling stories. Entertainment is valid and I guess I'll probably do it again before it's over. You know, do something that people won't get mad with me for." He has also expressed an intention to direct a movie set during the Viking Age, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Like The Passion of the Christ and Apocalypto, he wants this speculative film to feature dialogue in period languages. However, DiCaprio ultimately opted out of the project. In a 2012 interview, Gibson announced that the project, which he has titled Berserker, was still moving forward. In 2011, it was announced that Gibson had commissioned a screenplay from Joe Eszterhas about the Maccabees. The film is to be distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. The announcement generated significant controversy. In April 2012, Eszterhas wrote a letter to Gibson accusing him of sabotaging their movie about the Maccabees because he hates Jews, and citing a series of private incidents during which he allegedly heard Gibson express extremely racist views. Although written as a private letter, it was subsequently published on a film industry website. In response, Gibson stated that he still intends to make the movie, but will not base it upon Eszterhas' script, which he called substandard. Eszterhas then claimed his son had secretly recorded a number of Gibson's alleged hateful rants. In a 2012 interview, Gibson explained that the Maccabees film was still in preparation. He explained that he was drawn to the biblical account of the uprising due to its similarity to the American Old West genre. Personal life. Family. Gibson met Robin Denise Moore in the late 1970s, soon after filming Mad Max, when they were both tenants appearance at a house in Adelaide. At the time, Robin was a dental nurse and Mel was an unknown actor working for the South Australian Theatre Company. On June 7, 1980, Mel and Robin Gibson were married in a Roman Catholic church in Forestville, New South Wales. They have one daughter, and 6 sons: Hannah, B. 1980, Edward, B. 1982, Christian, B. 1982, William, B. 1985, Louis, B. 1988, Milo, B. 1990, Thomas, B. 1999, and 3 grandchildren. After 26 years of marriage, Mel and Robin Gibson separated on July 29, 2006. In a 2011 interview, Gibson stated that the separation began the day following his arrest for drunk driving in Malibu. Robin Gibson filed for divorce on April 13, 2009, citing irreconcilable differences. In a joint statement, the Gibsons declared, "Throughout our marriage and separation we have always strived to maintain the privacy and integrity of our family and will continue to do so." The divorce filing followed the March 2009 release of photographs appearing to show him on a beach embracing Russian pianist Oksana Grigorieva. Gibson's divorce was finalized on December 23, 2011, and the settlement with his ex-wife was said to be the highest in Hollywood history at over $400 million. On April 28, 2009, Gibson made a red carpet appearance with Grigorieva. Grigorieva, who had previously had a son with actor Timothy Dalton, gave birth to Gibson's daughter Lucia on the 30th of October 2009. In April 2010, it was made public that Gibson and Grigorieva had split. On June 21, 2010, Grigorieva filed a restraining order against Gibson to keep him away from her and their child. The restraining order was modified the next day regarding Gibson's contact with their child. Gibson obtained a restraining order against Grigorieva on June 25, 2010, in response to claims by Grigorieva that an incident of domestic violence occurred in January 2010. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department launched a domestic violence investigation in July 2010. On July 9, 2010, some audio recordings alleged to be of Gibson were posted on the internet. The same day Gibson was dropped by his agency, William Morris Endeavor. Civil rights activists alleged that Gibson had shown patterns of racism, sexism and anti-Semitism and called for a boycott of Gibson's movies. Gibson's estranged wife, Robin Gibson, filed a court statement declaring that she never experienced any abuse from Gibson, while forensic experts have questioned the validity of some of the tapes. In March 2011, Mel Gibson agreed to plead no contest to a misdemeanor battery charge. In April 2011, Gibson finally broke his silence about the incident in question. In an interview with Deadline.com, Gibson expressed gratitude to longtime friends Whoopi Goldberg and Jodie Foster, both of whom had spoken publicly in his defense. About the recordings, Gibson said, "I've never treated anyone badly or in a discriminatory way based on their gender, race, religion or sexuality, period. I don't blame some people for thinking that though. From the garbage they heard on those leaked tapes, which have been edited, you have to put it all in the proper context of being in an irrationally heated discussion at the height of a breakdown, trying to get out of a really unhealthy relationship. It's one terribly awful moment in time," said to one person, "in the span of one day and doesn't represent what I truly believe or how I've treated people my entire life." In the same interview, Gibson stated, "I was allowed to end the case and still maintain my innocence. It's called a West plea and it's not something that prosecutors normally allow. But in my case, the prosecutors and the judge agreed that it was the right thing to do. I could have continued to fight this for years and it probably would have come out fine. But I ended it for my children and my family. This was going to be such a circus. You don't drag other people in your life through this sewer needlessly, so I'll take the hit and move on." In August 2011, Gibson settled with Grigorieva and she was awarded $750,000, joint legal custody and a house in Sherman Oaks, California until their 3-year-old daughter Lucia turns 18. In 2013, Grigorieva sued her attorneys accusing them of advising her to sign a bad agreement, including one with Gibson that holds her taking legal action against him would compromise her financial settlement. Investments. Gibson is a property investor, with multiple properties in Malibu, California, several locations in Costa Rica, a private island in Fiji and properties in Australia. In December 2004, Gibson sold his 300-acre Australian farm in the Kawa Valley for $6 million. Also in December 2004, Gibson purchased Mago Island in Fiji from Tokyu Corporation of Japan for $15 million. Descendants of the original native inhabitants of Mago, who were displaced in the 1860s, have protested the purchase. Gibson stated it was his intention to retain the pristine environment of the undeveloped island. In early 2005, he sold his 45,000-acre Montana ranch to a neighbor. In April 2007 he purchased a 400-acre ranch in Costa Rica for $26 million, and in July 2007 he sold his 76-acre Tudor estate in Connecticut, which he purchased in 1994 for $9 million, for $40 million to an unnamed buyer. Also that month, he sold a Malibu property for $30 million that he had purchased for $24 million 2 years before. In 2008, he purchased the Malibu home of David Duchovny and T.E. Acute A. Leone, prankster. Gibson has a reputation for practical jokes, puns, stooge-inspired physical comedy, and doing outrageous things to shock people. As a director, he sometimes breaks the tension on set by having his actors perform serious scenes wearing a red clown nose. Helena Bonham Carter, who appeared alongside him in Hamlet, said of him, "He has a very basic sense of humor. It's a bit lavatorial and not very sophisticated." During the filming of Hamlet, Gibson would relieve pressure on the set by mooning the cast and crew. Directly following a serious scene, Gibson inserted a single frame of himself smoking a cigarette into the 2005 teaser trailer of Apocalypto, Philanthropy. Gibson and his former wife have contributed a substantial amount of money to various charities, one of which is Healing the Children. According to Chris Embleton, one of the founders, the Gibsons gave millions to provide life-saving medical treatment to needy children worldwide. They also supported the restoration of Renaissance artwork and gave millions of dollars to NIDA. Gibson donated $500,000 to the El Mirador Basin Project to protect the last tract of virgin rainforest in Central America and to fund archaeological excavations in the cradle of Mayan civilization. In July 2007, Gibson again visited Central America to make arrangements for donations to the indigenous population. Gibson met with Costa Rican President Oscar Arias to discuss how to channel the funds. During the same month, Gibson pledged to give financial assistance to a Malaysian company named Green Rubber Global for a tire recycling factory located in Gallup, New Mexico. While on a business trip to Singapore in September 2007, Gibson donated to a local charity for children with chronic and terminal illnesses. Gibson is also a supporter of Angels at Risk, a non-profit organization focusing on education about drug and alcohol abuse among teens. In a 2011 interview, Gibson said of his philanthropic works, "It gives you perspective. It's one of my faults. You tend to focus on yourself a lot, which is not always the healthiest thing for your psyche or anything else. If you take a little time out to think about other people, it's good. It's uplifting." Religious and political views. Faith. Gibson was raised a traditionalist Catholic. When asked about the Catholic doctrine of extra ecclesiam nulla salus, Gibson replied, "There is no salvation for those outside the church. I believe it. Put it this way, my wife is a saint. She's a much better person than I am. Honestly, she's Episcopalian, Church of England. She prays, she believes in God, she knows Jesus, she believes in that stuff, and it's just not fair if she doesn't make it. She's better than I am. But that is a pronouncement from the chair. I go with it." When he was asked whether John chapter 14 verse 6 is an intolerant position, he said that through the merits of Jesus' sacrifice, even people who don't know Jesus are able to be saved, but through him. Acquaintance Father William Fulco has said that Gibson denies neither the Pope nor Vatican II. Gibson told Diane Sawyer that he believes non-Catholics and non-Christians can go to heaven. Politics. Gibson has been described as ultra-conservative. Gibson complimented filmmaker Michael Moore and his documentary Fahrenheit 9/11 when he and Moore were recognized at the 2005 People's Choice Awards. Gibson's Icon Productions originally agreed to finance Moore's film, but later sold the rights to Miramax Films. Moore said that his agent Ari Emanuel claimed that top Republicans called Mel Gibson to tell him, "Don't expect to get more invitations to the White House." Icon's spokesman dismissed this story, saying, "We never run from a controversy. You'd have to be out of your mind to think that of the company that just put out The Passion of the Christ." In a July 1995 interview with Playboy magazine, Gibson said President Bill Clinton was a low-level opportunist and someone was telling him what to do. He said that the Rhodes Scholarship was established for young men and women who want to strive for a new world order, and this was a campaign for Marxism. Gibson later backed away from such conspiracy theories, saying, "It was like, hey, tell us a conspiracy, so I laid out this thing, and suddenly, it was like I was talking the gospel truth, espousing all this political shit like I believed in it." In the same 1995 Playboy interview, Gibson argued against ordaining women to the priesthood. In 2004, he publicly spoke out against taxpayer-funded embryonic stem cell research that involves the cloning and destruction of human embryos. In March 2005, he condemned the outcome of the Terry Schiavo case, referring to Schiavo's death as state-sanctioned murder. Gibson questioned the Iraq War in March 2004. In 2006, Gibson said that the fear-mongering depicted in his film Apocalypto reminds me a little of President Bush and his guys. In a 2011 interview, Gibson stated, "The whole notion of politics is they always present you with this or this or this. I'll get a newspaper to read between the lines. Why do you have to adhere to prescribed formulas that they have and people argue over them and they're all in a box? And you watch Fox claw CNN, and CNN claw Fox. Sometimes I catch a piece of the news and it seems insanity to me. I quietly support candidates. I'm not out there banging a drum for candidates, but I have supported a candidate and it's a whole other world. Once you've been exposed to it, once or twice or however many times, if you know the facts and see how they're presented, it's mind-boggling. It's a very scary arena to be in, but I do vote. I go in there and pull the lever. It's kind of like pulling the lever and watching the trapdoor fall out from beneath you. Why should we trust any of these people? None of them ever deliver on anything. It's always disappointing." Alcohol abuse and legal issues. Gibson has said that he started drinking at the age of 13. In a 2002 interview about his time at NIDA, Gibson said, "I had really good highs but some very low lows. I found out recently I'm manic depressive." Gibson was banned from driving in Ontario for 3 months in 1984, after rear-ending a car in Toronto while under the influence of alcohol. He retreated to his Australian farm for over a year to recover, but he continued to struggle with drinking. Despite this problem, Gibson gained a reputation in Hollywood for professionalism and punctuality such that Lethal Weapon 2 director Richard Donner was shocked when Gibson confided that he was drinking 5 pints of beer for breakfast. Reflecting in 2003 and 2004, Gibson said that despair in his mid-30s led him to contemplate suicide, and he meditated on Christ's passion to heal his wounds. He took more time off acting in 1991 and sought professional help. That year, Gibson's attorneys were unsuccessful at blocking the Sunday Mirror from publishing what Gibson shared at AA meetings. In 1992, Gibson provided financial support to Hollywood's Recovery Center, saying, "Alcoholism is something that runs in my family. It's something that's close to me. People do come back from it, and it's a miracle." On July 28, 2006, Gibson was arrested for driving under the influence, DUI, while speeding in his vehicle with an open container of alcohol, which is illegal in much of the United States. According to a 2011 article in Vanity Fair, Gibson first told the arresting officer, "My life is over. I'm fucked. Robin's going to leave me." According to the arrest report, Gibson exploded into an angry tirade when the arresting officer would not allow him to drive home. Gibson climaxed with the words, "Fucking Jews. The Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. Are you a Jew?" After the arrest report was leaked on TMZ.com, Gibson issued 2 apologies through his publicist, and, in a televised interview with Diane Sawyer, he affirmed the accuracy of the quotations. He further apologized for his despicable behavior, saying that the comments were blurted out in a moment of insanity, and asked to meet with Jewish leaders to help him discern the appropriate path for healing. After Gibson's arrest, his publicist said he had entered a recovery program to battle alcoholism. On August 17, 2006, Gibson pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor drunken driving charge and was sentenced to 3 years probation. He was ordered to attend self-help meetings 5 times a week for 4.5 months and 3 times a week for the remainder of the first year of his probation. He was also ordered to attend a first offenders program, was fined $1,300, and his license was restricted for 90 days. At a May 2007 progress hearing, Gibson was praised for his compliance with the terms of his probation and his extensive participation in a self-help program beyond what was required. In October 2011, Robert Downey, Jr., who has a history of overcoming legal problems and drug addiction, was honored at the 25th American Cinematheque Awards. Downey chose Gibson to present him with his award for his life's work. After Gibson's introduction, Downey did not discuss himself but instead explained he had chosen Gibson since he had helped Downey through his hardships. Downey then told the audience, "I humbly ask that you join me, unless you are completely without sin, and in which case you picked the wrong fucking industry, in forgiving my friend of his trespasses and offering him the same clean slate that you have me and allowing him to continue his great and ongoing contribution to our collective art without shame." After the speech, the 2 friends hugged on stage to applause. Controversies. The Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, GLAAD, accused Gibson of homophobia after a December 1991 interview in the Spanish newspaper El País in which he made derogatory comments about homosexuals. Gibson later defended his comments and rejected calls to apologize even as he faced fresh accusations of homophobia in the wake of his film Braveheart. However, Gibson joined GLAAD in hosting 10 lesbian and gay filmmakers for an on-location seminar on the set of the movie Conspiracy Theory in January 1997. In 1999, when asked about the comments to El País, Gibson said, "I shouldn't have said it, but I was tickling a bit of vodka during that interview, and the quote came back to bite me on the ass." In July 2010, Gibson had been recorded during a phone call with Oksana Grigorieva suggesting that if she got raped by a pack of niggers, she would be to blame. Gibson was barred from coming near Grigorieva or her daughter due to a domestic violence-related restraining order. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department launched a domestic violence investigation against Gibson, later dropped when Gibson pled no contest to a misdemeanor battery charge. Theater credits, awards and honors. In 1985, Gibson was named the sexiest man alive by People, the first person to be named so. Gibson quietly declined the Chevalier des Arts et Lettres from the French government in 1995 as a protest against France's resumption of nuclear testing in the Southwest Pacific. On July 25, 1997, Gibson was named an honorary officer of the Order of Australia, AO, in recognition of his service to the Australian film industry. The award was honorary because substantive awards are made only to Australian citizens. Australian Film Institute Award, Best Actor in a Lead Role, for Tim, 1979, and Gallipoli, 1981. Academy Award, Best Picture, for Braveheart, 1995. Academy Award, Best Director, for Braveheart, 1995. People's Choice Awards, Favorite Motion Picture Actor, 1991, 1997, 2001, 2003, 2004. People's Choice Awards, Favorite Motion Picture Star in a Comedy, 2001. Showist Award, Male Star of the Year, 1993. Showist Award, Director of the Year, 1996. American Cinematheque Gala Tribute, American Cinematheque Award, 1995. Hasty Pudding Theatricals, Man of the Year, 1997. Australian Film Institute, Global Achievement Award, 2002. Honorary doctorate recipient and undergraduate commencement speaker, Loyola Marymount University, 2003. World's Most Powerful Celebrity by U.S. Business Magazine Forbes, 2004. The Hollywood Reporter Innovator of the Year, 2004. Honorary Fellowship in Performing Arts by Limcoquing University, 2007. Outstanding Contribution to World Cinema Award at the Irish Film and Television Awards, 2008. Nominations: Saturn Award for Best Actor for Mad Max 2, 1981. Australian Film Institute Award for Best Actor in a Leading Role for The Year of Living Dangerously, 1982. MTV Movie Award for Best Kiss, with Rene Russo, and Most Desirable Male for Lethal Weapon 3, 1992. BAFTA Award for Best Direction, Directors Guild of America Award, MTV Movie Award for Best Performance, Male, and MTV Movie Award for Most Desirable Male for Braveheart, 1995. Golden Globe Award for Best Actor, Motion Picture Drama for Ransom, 1996. MTV Movie Award for Best Action Sequence, with Danny Glover, for Lethal Weapon 4, 1998. Golden Globe Award for Best Actor, Motion Picture Musical or Comedy for What Women Want, 2000. MTV Movie Award for Best Performance, Male for The Patriot, 2000. Satellite Award for Best Director for The Passion of the Christ, 2004. BAFTA Award for Best Film Not in the English Language and Golden Globe Award for Best Foreign Language Film for Apocalypto, 2006.